Welcome, everybody, to a special preview edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton, and it is game day. Weather is, to be honest, a little on the shady side, but rain should hold off until the fourth quarter. Tonight, MetLife Stadium, the 1-2 New York Giants against the 1-2 Dallas Cowboys, and what are the stakes? Well, from a Giants perspective, let's be honest. The season was hanging on by a thread, on the brink, 11 seconds in on Sunday in Cleveland. Now, all of a sudden, the Giants are sitting at 1-2, and maybe the season turns here. A Cowboys team that limps into MetLife Stadium on a short week. I think the Cowboys put this out. This is the first time in their history that the Cowboys have to travel on a short week, which obviously we know they always have that short week set up at home in Dallas because of Thanksgiving. And now roles are reversed. So we'll see how that Cowboys team handles having a short week, no practice, just walkthroughs, heading out to MetLife Stadium for tonight. It's 13 out of 14 for the Cowboys. And let's talk a little history. On today's show, I also asked you for your questions, some listeners of the All In podcast going into tonight's game. So I'll run through those on Twitter/X in a minute. But let's talk history. Let's talk this game and set up some key scenarios. First, let's talk injuries. Giants, they'll be without Drew Phillips in the nickel and Adoree Jackson. Both had calf injuries from Sunday in Cleveland. As soon as you hear calf injury, you know it's going to be more than the 4 days that it would take to get both of them back on the field. Would not surprise me. We're recording this on Thursday morning. Giants don't have to make their roster moves for tonight until 4 p.m. Wouldn't surprise me to see Adoree Jackson land on injured reserve. Maybe they call up Duke Shelley, who's a veteran corner, has experience in the nickel. He can come up. Look, the reality is, and my producer Paul Wood asked me before we started recording, how do they cover CeeDee Lamb? Well, the reality is the Giants would be challenged to cover CeeDee Lamb regardless of who they had in the slot or on the outside. I think if Lamb is on the outside, the Giants will cover him with Tay Banks. I think if he moves inside, the way I would approach it is you have someone play the nickel. Nick McLeod should return tonight, so maybe he's the starter there. Maybe McLeod plays outside, and then you can have Cordell Flott inside. But I'm not singling up CeeDee Lamb at all today. What I'm doing is I'm putting a safety over the top for CeeDee Lamb, and I'm going from there and making the Cowboys beat me, not only running the football, but try to go to some of their other weapons. Now, they do have other weapons, probably not as deep and productive as they have had in the past, but force Dak to go elsewhere to beat you. And I think you can do that by putting a safety over the top wherever CeeDee Lamb goes. Play more zone. I think that will be a very interesting aspect of this game. I think Shane Bowen, after playing more man last week, Dak Prescott just absolutely shredded the Giants defense last year, and we know what Wink Martindale wanted to do. It just was not a good matchup against Dak Prescott and this Cowboys offense. The 89-17 combined score and 2 losses, the fact that the Giants did not sack Dak Prescott during the Wink Martindale regime, which is pretty crazy. Now, that was only 3 of 4 games because if you remember, they had Cooper Rush as the Cowboys quarterback 2 years ago. So it wasn't against Dak, but that game last year really was the moment we started seeing the frustration between Brian Dable and Wink Martindale. That game in Dallas, 49-17. It was a disgrace. I mean, as bad as 40-0 on opening night, the fact that you can have a second game against the Cowboys that rivals the feeling that you had. So this entire organization wants to put those two games behind them. How do you do that? You come out here and you compete today. So historically, from that perspective, we talked about what they may do at corner. I think this pass rush has got to get going. They have, and I mean get going against Dallas. They obviously 8 sacks last week against the Browns. They were outstanding. Azeez Ojulari has not gotten enough credit for how he performed on Sunday. Brian Burns really changed the game with his sack, forced fumble against Deshaun Watson. They never let Watson get comfortable, and I think that's something that they're going to have to do against Dak Prescott. Look, Prescott is a step up in class to Deshaun Watson. There's no doubt about it. So the Giants have to be able to affect him up front. Cowboys, this is not your father's Cowboys offensive line. You know, they have a rookie in Guyton at left tackle. They have a rookie at center who is going to be seeing a lot of Dexter Lawrence. So you need to be able to dictate tempo up front, and I think that's what the Giants have to get out there and do early on today. And that's, you know, it's as simple as it gets. Stop the run, get the Cowboys off the field. When the Giants have been at their worst in this rivalry over the past decade, they haven't been able to get off the field against the Cowboys. The Cowboys have asserted themselves up front, dominated the Giants on both sides of the ball up front, dominated time of possession, and really prevented the Giants from finding any sort of rhythm, both offensively and defensively. And I think that needs to change for this rivalry to change, or at least change for one night tonight. Historically, Giants have not beaten Dak Prescott since 2016. That was when he was a rookie. They swept the series that year in 2016. That was when they made the playoffs, first year for Ben McAdoo as head coach. You had Victor Cruz scoring his first touchdown back from the knee and the calf to beat the Cowboys on opening day that year. And then obviously you had the game in December that the Giants won on an Odell Beckham Jr. touchdown late. It was 10-7. That was the infamous Michelle Tafoya post-game interview with Jackrabbit, Janoris Jenkins, when she referred to him as Janoris, and he just deadpanned Jackrabbit and really wouldn't answer a question until Michelle Tafoya addressed him by Jackrabbit. But he was great that year against Dez Bryant. Remember those rivalries. Now we flip it forward, and the rivalry that everyone's going to be talking about tonight is a budding rivalry. First installment, Malik Neighbors for the Giants, Trayvon Diggs for the Cowboys. They got into it a little bit in the offseason on social media. I like the way Malik approached it this week and said, it's game time. I'm not talking about anything that happened. He obviously got a message from Brian Dable, Joe Shane, and everybody else in the front office that, you know what, this isn't the way to handle things going into this game. So gone are the days of Justin Tuck saying, I hate the Cowboys. Malik Neighbors is going to be right in the spotlight, and it's very interesting. He comes off of Sunday's great game in Cleveland. Monday, he watched his college teammate Jaden Daniels have his coming out party in prime time against the Bengals. And now 4 nights later, well, 3 nights later, I guess I can do the math. 3 nights later, Malik Neighbors steps into the primetime spotlight against the Cowboys. You're going to see a lot of the Odell catch tonight, I'm sure. Remember about that game? The Giants lost that game, and that's all the Odell haters through the years would always point that out, is that as great as the catch was against the Cowboys, with Al Michaels on the call, and Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit have the call tonight, Kaylee Hartung on the sideline. That game in New York and in Dallas will be on locally on Fox. So remember, if you don't have Amazon Prime and you're still in this coverage area, in this local market, you can still catch the game on Fox. And So Neighbors, Diggs will be very interesting tonight. The Giants took advantage last week. For some reason, Denzel Ward of the Browns did not travel. Now, I'm not saying Malik would not have done what he did against everybody else, against Denzel Ward, but it'll be interesting to see if Malik is moving up and down and all over the formation, if Diggs follows or if the Cowboys turn to somebody else. Kalen Carson, who's their other starting corner, is doubtful tonight. So I would say he's not going to play. So that'll be an interesting one to watch as far as the Cowboys in the secondary and how they handle Malik. So I think, as I mentioned, historically, the Giants have not beaten the Cowboys with a crowd in the stands at MetLife since that 2016 game. Remember the final game of Joe Judge's first year, which was that fateful Sunday when the Giants were still alive, despite having 5 wins going into the game and winning their 6th game by beating the Cowboys that day. That was the Xavier McKinney as a rookie, came back from the broken foot, intercepted Andy Dalton in the end zone, and then Wayne Gallman almost fumbling that game away and getting lucky enough to recover his own fumble. So the Giants won in the afternoon, and then that night it was Washington-Philly, and that was the Doug Peterson after 3 quarters pulling Jalen Hurts for Nate Sudfeld, and Washington ended up coming back, winning that game and winning the division. And that was Joe Judge's as long as I'm the coach, we will never, ever do something like that. And that was kind of when the fan base rallied around Joe Judge. And then a year later, everybody kind of went after Joe Judge, kind of the tale of 2 seasons for the former Giants head coach. And now we're here. And Brian Daboll is the head coach of the Giants in his 3rd year. He has yet to beat the Cowboys. So that's something that they will go in tonight, hoping to kind of put to bed as far as that goes. So what other keys? I think from the Giants, it's simple. You need to be able to keep them off base. Brian Daboll had a great game as a play caller last week. He's going against yet another veteran. This time it's Mike Zimmer, who's taken over the Cowboys defense. Last week was Jim Schwartz, different styles, but Daboll controlled that first half last week with his play calling, and I think he needs to do the same tonight. You need to be able to run the football and take advantage of some of the things that the Cowboys present. I think you're going to see a lot more running from Daniel Jones. Last week, one of the biggest plays that got called back for kind of a questionable holding call on Daniel Bellinger was a option run that Daniel Jones pulled the ball and ran and had a huge gain. And then the flag came down behind him because Bellinger put a little emphasis on the block, and they called him for a hold. I didn't think that was technically a hold, but they did not get away with it. So I think running the football tonight will be a big, big deal. So that's where we're at with that. Let's get into your questions, because then we will wrap up this pregame episode of All In, and then I will be back tonight. Make sure you check YouTube. Make sure you check all your podcasts for the audio versions of All In, and we will try to knock that out tonight and do a post-game episode. If by some chance we can't get it up post-game, we will do it tomorrow first thing in the morning to try to assess everything that transpires tonight. All right, first question is from Chris _Jetter. Hey, Art, hope all is well. Just saw your tweet and wanted to ask, what is the best route for the defense to slow down the Dallas offense? And do you think Daniel Jones can recreate the first half from the Cleveland game against Dallas? Well, I've kind of talked about that, Chris, a little bit. I do think that they need to send the attention to CeeDee Lamb, bracket him wherever you can. I'm not doing it out of disrespect for the rest of the weapons on the Cowboys, but it's clearly CeeDee Lamb and everybody else. So I'm bracketing him with a safety, and then have my nickel corner with CD inside, and then if I have to be on the outside, I'll just take my chances with who I have on the outside. And that's the way I attack the Cowboys offense and say, you know what, Dak, if you're going to beat me by going to your other guys. Brandon Cooks is obviously a weapon. He did some big things against the Cowboys, against the Giants last year, but I'll take my chances there. I don't want to write it in pen and ink that all of a sudden CeeDee Lamb is down for 7 catches, 130 yards, and a touchdown. I need to do what I can to neutralize that and see if I can make the Cowboys, if not one-dimensional, take away their best tool out of the toolbox and then say, okay, now let's see how you attack us from there. So that's what I would do. The second thing is Daniel Jones. Look, he needs a big game tonight, and it's the first game back at home. Obviously, they've played 2 games on the road in Maryland against the Commanders and then in Cleveland. The last time Daniel Jones was here, he was awful. The entire team was really bad. Jones, you remember the hecklers at the players' exit with Daniel Jones, calling him Danny Pennies. We'll see if that changes tonight. But Jones needs to play well. And like I said, I think he does that with his legs as much as he does with his arm early on tonight. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is a key tonight. And the Giants are still force-feeding Theo Johnson. And, I wrote about this a little bit today, the rookies and how the rookies have been embraced by this locker room. They're dealing with growing pains from Theo Johnson. He hasn't been perfect. Some bad plays have come up when the Giants have looked in Theo Johnson's direction. Now, some of that is on the quarterback, some of that is on the protection, but some of that is on Theo, and he's got to learn, if you're running some of these choice routes, you've got to be sharp, you've got to be deliberate with your routes, and you've got to see the same thing as the quarterback. And that interception last week that got overturned because of the not intentional grounding, because of the roughing the passer on Jones. They got away with the interception. I still say that was as much on Theo Johnson as it was on Daniel Jones. Jones clearly thought Theo Johnson was going to be in a spot that he was not. Now, if he drifts off of that spot, you're going to get a bad play, and that's what happened. So let's see that relationship kind of take another step forward. And if not, then you've got to put somebody else in that spot, like a Daniel Bellinger, to try to take advantage of some of those opportunities. So thanks for that question, Chris. All right, let's go to the next one. Going through my DMs here to make sure I hit everybody. All right, so that was Chris. All right, let's go to James Layden. What does DJ have to do to get another year? And on the flip side, what does he have to do to avoid not getting benched? And then is the Giants D-line good enough to carry the team while rushing 4? All right, good question. Thanks, James. I think the one thing about the medical, the injury clause is that, it's all going to depend on where the Giants are as a team. If they somehow come out of this the way they did in 2007 and go from 0-2 on the verge of 0-3 and then turn it into 6-2, which is, I believe, what they were under Tom Coughlin and, arguably the greatest season the Giants have ever had. I know 86 rivals it, 90 was great, and I'm sure there's somebody out there listening who will say, back in 58, but, they were 0-2 that 2007 season, and they were on the verge of going to 0-3. And everyone remembers Jason Campbell, and I think it was Betts who was the back, and the Giants had the goal line stand to get their first win. At that moment, nobody was saying, boy, this team is good enough. They're going to move on and win Super Bowl 42 and upset the Patriots. That was not being talked about. So sometimes we don't have that 30,000 foot view of what a season can be. So for Daniel Jones, it's going to come down to wins and losses. I mean, if they fall out of this and it gets to a point where the risk is too high for whatever reward you're getting, I think then maybe they make that call and they pull Jones out and they say, you know what, we can't risk having his injury clause trigger. Now, one thing about the injury clause is it's if he can't pass a physical, I believe it's on the 5th day of the league year next year. So that's in March. Not being able to pass a physical, it's got to be a very serious injury. It's got to be, an Achilles, an ACL, something more severe than just, a high ankle sprain or something like that. So just keep that in mind when you keep talking about these injury clauses and what it matters. It comes down to where he is next March, not where he is 3 weeks from now, as far as that injury goes. So can he repeat the first half against Cleveland? We'll see. That's up to this offense and what kind of plays they can call against Dallas. And like I said, I've been pretty impressed with the way the Giants, when they've set out to run the football, how they've been able to run the football using the double teams and the duo blocks against Washington. I think you'll see some of the same against Dallas. Have Devin Singletary hold on to the football. I think maybe Tyrone Tracy gets a little bit more involved tonight. They were definitely involved in the passing game against Cleveland. So we'll see how that goes. And then, is this defensive front good enough to carry this team? Well, we'll see. We will see. We know Dexter Lawrence is. Who's the best player on the field tonight? That's the question. If you're asking that question after the game and Dexter Lawrence is the answer, and then maybe Brian Burns is number 2, well, then you know what? As a defensive player, if they can outshine Micah Parsons, that might mean the Giants are actually doing something good. Obviously, offensively, you want the best player to be Malik Neighbors, and we'll see. But it's been a while since the Giants can go into a game against the Cowboys and say, you know what, we might have the best player on the field on both sides of the ball. And that could be possible. You could have that kind of game. Is CeeDee Lamb a better player than Malik Neighbors right now? Yeah. Is Micah Parsons as good or more explosive than Dexter Lawrence? They play different positions. But the reality is, as far as impact goes, that could happen tonight. So thanks for that question, James. Let's go to JG, the sequel. Who do I expect to step up in the secondary with no Drew and no Adoree'? Well, I mentioned that, and again, if it doesn't come to fruition and Duke Shelley does not get the elevation tonight to get on the roster for game day, he's a veteran. He's been here since the summer. They called up Art Green last week, but I think that was more special teams. I think if they had brought a corner up to be in coverage, I think it would have been Duke Shelley. So if Duke Shelley comes in, I could see him in the nickel and being kind of an underrated guy in the secondary. Maybe you put a Dane Belton or an Isaiah Simmons in the nickel against CeeDee Lamb to try to be physical with him at the line. And then you put a corner over the top, something like that, to see if you can, kind of cause the Cowboys some problems on the inside. That's what I would do. So if I'm going right now at 10:04 on Thursday morning, if Duke Shelley gets called up, I think Duke Shelley can be a guy who plays an important role tonight. He's not going to shut down CeeDee Lamb, but he might give the Giants some quality snaps on the inside. And if it's not that, then maybe the Nick McLeod, Cordell Flock combo, somebody's outside, somebody moves inside, and then they go from there. But thanks for that, JG. And then the last one, Sean Archer. This is a long one, so I'll read it. DJ showed real improvement on Sunday, standing in the pocket and being willing to take a shot while delivering strikes. The Garrett hit on the Neighbors TD comes to mind. That's true. Is he capable of improving the touch on his deep ball? My hope is that these overthrows are compensation for his bad underthrows in camp. If it's not, the ceiling for this offense is very limited. We risk losing Hyatt mentally, as Dable seems willing to only dial up a deep shot here and there. Look, the dialing up deep shots, we made such a big deal about it in the summer. The Giants made such a big deal about it in the summer. And the reality is it may not come to fruition. If teams are going to start playing like that shell look, which is what Washington did, you're going to have to try to beat teams in other ways. So I think right now, I think the Giants will go to those deep shots if they're there. Darius Slayton is questionable for tonight with that thumb injury. I think he plays. If he doesn't, maybe they call up Isaiah Hodgins and then Jalen Hyatt plays more. the thing about Jalen Hyatt is that, when you're comparing him to Darius Slayton is 5 years into his career. And Jalen Hyatt is 1 full year, and now this is his 4th game into year 2. So it's not a surprise that Darius Slayton is a more complete receiver. Will Jalen Hyatt get there? I think you're going to have to see. You're going to have to see and give him time. And the kid obviously wants to work, and the Giants haven't backed off him. And Jalen Hyatt is not walking around sulking. Could it get to there if it's week 11 and, Jalen Hyatt still is not getting playing time? Well, yeah, but let's see where it gets there. See if it gets there first before you start talking about that. It would not surprise me again to see Jalen Hyatt involved early, but it's going to be how the Cowboys play the Giants. And if they play them defensively with that shell over the top and say nothing in back of us and put all the attention to Malik Neighbors, somebody on the other side is going to have to beat them. And if that's Slayton, if that's Hyatt, if that's one of the tight ends, if that's the backs out of the backfield, the Giants are going to get to a point where they're going to need other guys to make plays. So I know that's not a complete answer, but that's where we're at right now. All right. Thanks to everybody for all the questions. We're going to wrap it up now. Get ready for tonight's game. Again, listen to this. Catch us either post-game all over northjersey.com or tomorrow with the post-game podcast. We'll try to get that up again tonight, but pushing that up at midnight. Hopefully some of you will still be around to watch it. If not, we'll get you tomorrow. And that's about where it's at. I'm interested to see tonight how the Giants respond, considering how they left MetLife in week 1 and getting booed out of the building. Have the Cowboys gobbled up all the tickets. Have the Cowboys fans. It's going to be a Cowboy fan night. It's always a Cowboys fan night at MetLife. It's that have the Giants regained a little bit of momentum to the point where the fans will be back into it. And that's why an early start I think would be good for the Giants to get out of the gates, to get the crowd behind them, and then see if you can carry it. So it's a game. It's meaningful. It's 1-2 versus 1-2. Fans are in the building. Sooner or later, the Giants are going to beat the Cowboys again. I'm not sure if that happens tonight. My prediction was that Cowboys win a close one, but I won't be surprised if the Giants end up winning the game, especially if they can run the football against the Cowboys, and if Daniel Jones can run the football, going back to maybe where he was back in 2022. So for Paul Wood, I'm Art Stapleton. Make sure you check out all our coverage, our live file, updating from MetLife Stadium, starting at 4 o'clock. And we will be back again over the weekend to see if the Giants stabilize their season at 2-2, or if they're 1-3, getting ready to go face Seattle, all there out there on the West Coast, and see if the Seahawks are still undefeated. So that's where we're at. Giants Cowboys. Make sure you check out Al Michaels on the call tonight. I believe he's called 20 career Giants Cowboys games, which is pretty crazy. So Giants fans, in the spirit of Al Michaels, do you believe in miracles? We got an opportunity to get one tonight. So thanks for listening. We're all in. We appreciate you being all in too. We'll catch you tonight from MetLife.